The mystery of why a tame beluga whale wearing a harness swam up to fishermen in Norway may finally have been solved. 5 years ago, when it took place, there was widespread speculation that the white whale, who became known as Valdemir, had been trained to spy for Russia. Well, now a marine scientist who was working in Russia at the time has told the BBC that she's certain the whale escaped from a military facility near Murmansk. Well, we can hear from our environment correspondent, Jonah Fisher.
April 2019, a beluga whale wearing a harness approaches a fishing boat in Norwegian waters. Belugas live in the Arctic, and it was rare to see one this far south. The fisherman immediately knew it needed help.
I remember thinking, just try to be gentle.
He was soon in the water, taking the harness off. But where had the whale come from?
That we had to clip off to get the harness off the whale.
A close look at the harness buckle offered a tantalizing clue.
Equipment, St. Petersburg.
Equipment, St. Petersburg. How is this possible? We didn't have any answers.
Freed from the harness, the beluga sought out more human company.
Fick du dig en fisk?
Now named Valdemir, he spent the summer living and performing tricks in a Norwegian harbour.
It was very obvious that this particular whale had been conditioned to be putting his nose on anything that looked like a target, because he was doing it each time. But we have no idea what kind of facility he was in, so we don't know what he was trained for.
Next, take a look at this beluga whale found off the coast of Norway.
It's the tail of the whale that's had experts baffled.
The marine mystery made headlines, but it's long been thought that the beluga was most likely trained by Russia to be part of a top-secret military program. But it's just been an assumption until now.
I'm 99% sure that he escaped. I was one of the leading beluga scientists in Russia.
Dr Shpak told a new BBC documentary that she believes the whale fled Russian military training.
As soon as this information leaked, everyone started to talk to everyone amongst the marine mammal community in Russia. I can't fully disclose the contacts where I got this information from. I've heard what his nickname was. His nickname was Andryuha. This animal was kind of easy to train in terms that it was inquisitive and active, but at the same time, it had the character that it often did what he wanted to do. So it seemed like no one was surprised that it actually just escaped.
But what are the whales being trained to do? Satellite images suggest they're being kept in pens alongside a Russian submarine base.
The location of the beluga whales, very close to the submarines and the surface vessels, might tell us that they were actually part of a guarding system. They could be considered as a kind of underwater guard dogs for the military in this area.
Sadly, there is no happy ending. 2 months ago, the beluga's lifeless body was found floating off the coast of Norway. So had Putin's Russia caught up with the whale that got away? In this case, it appears the answer is no. The Norwegian authorities say Valdemir, or should that be Andryuha, died when a stick became lodged in his mouth. Jonah Fisher, BBC News.
A fascinating story, and Andryuha obviously called Valdemir, Hval for whale in Norwegian, and also they took a play on words when it came to Vladimir Putin, so hence Valdemir. If you are in the UK, you can watch that full documentary, Secrets of the Spy Whale. It will be broadcast on BBC 2 tonight at 9 p.m. It will also be available on the BBC iPlayer. And now we can speak to Sergei Dobrinin, an investigative journalist from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. You actually were the first to track down the whale, and you linked him to the Russian military facility, just to a secret Russian military facility. Just talk us through how you came across the whale, because you were certainly not looking for Valdimir.
Yes, hello. It was really a fascinating story. My colleague Mark Rutov and me, we were actually investigating an institution, a scientific facility in Russia that was created to make new forms of Novichok toxin, the poison that was used to poison Sergei Skripal in Salisbury and later Alexei Navalny in Omsk. Navalny, the leader of Russian opposition. And we were looking through other institutes that were connected to this secretive and dark place that was doing Novichok toxins. And one of these institutes was located in St. Petersburg, called Gosny PP in Russian. And officially, it makes research on topics like microelectronics and information security. But we looked through some archival materials, and we found out that it used to do research for Soviet and Russian Navy, in particular research on marine mammals, which was quite strange comparing to official version of doing microelectronics and information security. And then we looked through some officially published procurement documents, and we found out that this institute buys a lot of frozen fish, which obviously has nothing to do with information security. And we understood that it is still into research of marine mammals. And then we found that the scientists from this institute published a few open scientific papers describing how they train these beluga whales. And then we recalled that we heard a story about whale Valdimir found in Norway. And we thought, okay, the harness said St. Petersburg. This institute is also in St. Petersburg. Apparently, this whale could escape this institute.
So could you actually directly link Valdimir, or Andrucha as he was called in Russian, to this, to actually training or being trained by the Russian military?
Yes, actually we can now. So we are doing open source intelligence research, and what we could find out was that this institute has or had two bases: one on Barents Sea in the north of Russia, and another one on the Black Sea in the south of Russia, nearby city of Sochi. And we could trace that belugas at some point were transported from the northern base to the southern base, because they were used in Sochi to guard the coastal waters during the Olympic Games. A lot of big yachts and other ships with Russian oligarchs, with guests, with tourists were parked in the harbor of Sochi. And apparently, as local media reported, these whales were brought to Sochi to guard the coastal waters. And it was obvious from the number of, from the quantity of frozen fish and other open source data that no belugas were left on the northern base. And we knew that there were, I think, 5 belugas on the northern base, and only three arrived to Sochi. So 2 belugas went missing sometime in the process. Maybe they escaped during the transportation, or they escaped before that time, but we knew that bird belugas were missing. And it was pretty obvious that Valdimir could be one of them. And later, as the documentary found out with other scientists, that truly Andrucha or Valdimir was trained at this Murmansk base that belonged to this institute.
Absolutely fascinating. Sergei, we don't have much time left, but just you obviously appear in this documentary, Secrets of the Spy Whale. He was more of a guard whale than a spy whale. What does that say about what's going on in the Arctic?
Yeah, absolutely. According to the scientific papers that I mentioned, they were trained to, to use the internal bionic radar to find out objects in the muddy waters, like objects like spheres or cubes, these kind of things. And when they saw them, they reported it to the researcher. And also they were trained to see divers, for example. If they see a diver in the certain bordered waters, they could also report to the researcher that they saw this unwelcome diver. So they were definitely trained to be guard whales, not spy whales at all.
Absolutely fascinating. Sergei Dobrinin, investigative journalist who features in Secrets of the Spy Whale. Thank you so much for talking us through this. Thank you. And I've just got to big up the producer that is working with me today, Oksana Kundirenko, who was actually one of the producers on this documentary. A fascinating insight. If you're here in the UK, you can watch Secrets of the Spy Whale. It will be on BBC Two tonight at 9 o'clock. It will also be available on iPlayer, so do check it out.